Everyday Orthodox is about to celebrate its 200th episode, and my, how the tables have turned. I'm Elisa Bieletich-Davis, and my daughter Helena is going to be on the show interviewing me this time. We'll see you October 8th on Ancient Faith Radio.
This is Everyday Orthodox with your host, Elisa Bieletich-Davis. We get together on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We're hoping to get to know the members of the body of Christ across all of our various jurisdictions and regions. We may worship in various languages or even on different calendars, but we have so much in common. Come get to know someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ. And as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is Sunday, October 1st, 2023, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. Welcome to Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bieletich-Davis. And it's true, we get together here on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians and to build community through conversation, to get to know our fellow Orthodox brothers and sisters. And I've been doing this for, 6 years now. And as we've been doing it, people periodically say, well, when are we going to learn about your life? When are you going to talk about what you've been doing? And so guess what? It's next week, because I said back when I thought there would, the 200th episode, that sounded very far away. And I said, well, when we hit 200, that's what we'll do to celebrate. And here we are. So this is our 199th episode of Everyday Orthodox. And next week will be 200. So my daughter, Helena Bieletich, will be right here doing my job. And she's going to ask me all kinds of embarrassing questions. And we'll see how that goes. And, at any rate, we're very glad to have you here tonight. We have another wonderful guest tonight. And of course, you're welcome, as always, to call in and join the conversation. The number is 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. And you can call and join the conversation if you like. Matushka Trudy Richter is right here answering your calls. She'll patch you right through, and you can ask whatever you like. So without any further ado, let me tell you about tonight's guest. I'm really excited that he was able to come on, actually. His name is Father Raphael Barberg, and so he is a priest at St. George at the Antiochian Church in Niagara Falls, actually. So it's a really neat place. If you haven't been to Niagara Falls, you should go. And when you go, be there on a Sunday and stop by St. George. It is a beautiful parish. It's really neat. The people are beautiful. The church itself actually is really beautiful as well. But so Father Raphael, for 20 years, he served the Buffalo Police Department. He's worked with the IOCC, doing a lot of pastoral care in different circumstances. So he's got, I think, a lot of interesting stories for us, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. Father, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Elisa. What a blessing to be here. I'm looking forward to this. Oh,
me too. I've been looking forward to it. And I should mention, you are, in fact, the priest of Margaret's Church.
That's right.
Anyone who's a regular listener will recall that we were actually just talking to one of the St. George parishioners, Margaret Slayman Ewing. And here we go with her parish priest. So that's
Aunt Margaret is a big act to follow. So we'll see what we can do.
She's awesome. Yeah, there's no topping Margaret. Well, we're just going to have to aim for something totally different and do something else because there's no topping that. She's fantastic. But I was in Niagara Falls not too long ago, and I was able to meet Margaret and spend some time with Father Raphael. So I made both of them come on the show, which is, in fact, you'll be meeting Father Raphael's wife one of these days too, because just what a wonderful parish, what neat people. And I think it's just going to be a blast. But so Father, tell me, where did your story start? Like, where were you born?
So, despite my Yankee accent, I was born in Pensacola, Florida. The long line of good Baptist people in the South is my mother. My great-grandfather was a pretty famous Baptist preacher in Pensacola, Florida area. And but my father was a Minnesota farm boy of Finnish. He was 100% Finnish, third generation Finn. He did his flight training in Pensacola. They met, and hence me and my two siblings entered the world. So I started off in Pensacola, Florida, and I think I was maybe 4 or something like that when they moved us up to Buffalo, New York. Made a home here, and yeah, that's where we start.
Wow, Finnish. That's a fascinating culture. Those are some interesting people. Was your dad, does that mean he was Lutheran? What was he
So the
religiously?
family was Lutheran going back a couple generations, but at some point my grandparents had a spiritual encounter and a religious conversion and became Pentecostal Christians. So they were Pentecostal, and I'm not sure the exact timeline of with my dad when that occurred. Whether he was, I think he was maybe a teenager, so he really wasn't raised so much in that faith. But yeah, both sides of my family. We on my Finnish side, I had ancestors who were lay ministers, and then of course my family in Florida, as I said, we're Baptists with preachers on that side of the
That's
family
neat.
tree. Yeah,
So you're really fulfilling kind of a genetic mission here.
it
You're
must have
along the
something to
line of.
do with it. I never thought I would be in ministry until I became Orthodox, but um,
That's
yeah,
neat.
it's a blessing to have the
That's
godly
really neat.
heritage.
Wow. Okay, so how old were you when you guys went from Pensacola up to Buffalo?
So I'm not exactly sure. Somewhere between 3 and 4, I think we
Okay.
were, and grew up in the Buffalo, New York area, um, and Orchard Park, New York, which is the town south of Buffalo, which is where the Buffalo Bills play. And I have to state how happy I am today. The Buffalo Bills beating the Miami Dolphins. Sorry to all my Florida friends and
Yeah.
family, but um, so
Well,
yeah,
that
so I
makes
grew
sense. You
up
were born
there.
in Florida. You're technically a native Floridian, and here you are
Yeah,
celebrating the defeat of Miami Dolphins. It's terrible.
yeah. Well, in
Life's
Pensacola, I think they're
complicated.
more New Orleans Saints fans probably around there.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. That's true. Pensacola is just barely in Florida. It's like going to fall off the tip there. So, but
That's right.
uh, but
There's disadvantages to growing up in Western New York, and when I'm pumping gas in February, I ask, God, why did my parents move me here to this climate? Um,
well, and
but
I
that, and every time my team comes close and they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, I ask, why did we live in Buffalo and have to, you know which is probably why I'm such a rabid Bills fan, because you know it's you've been doing it too long and we've never gotten there, and you just it really what happened was when I was um, away in ministry for 10 years, which skipping ahead, but for 10 years we lived outside of our hometown. And when you're in Maryland and everyone is wearing their purple on Friday to support their team, and then, you're like, okay, I'm going to start rooting for my home team again. And that coincided with them, being good. But we're not here to talk about football. That would take another couple hours. So.
well, but I do think that there's something to the idea that whenever there's a team that really has struggled and not done well, the fans become like the most loyal fans because you are forced to stand by them through all these lousy years, and then when there's a good year, it's like Christmas. It's the most amazing thing. So that's in a way maybe it's a blessing. I don't know, but
It's a
so
blessing to have something that holds you together with your neighbors, whatever that is. And we know through history that in Rome and other places, well, in Byzantium, they would have the chariot teams, and they had the different colors that they rooted for. And it was, it can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. Just like anything else, we can make an idol of the things we love and enjoy. Being a Buffalonian, rooting for the Bills and the Sabres, which are kind of in the same lot. They've been close to being good, and never quite good enough. It's character building. That's what I tell my sons when they complain. Why did you make me a Bills fan? It's character building. It's something you can relate to. You're walking through the airport. You're looking for your gate, and you see everybody in their red, white, and blue. and there's the Bills, there's my gate, there's my people right over there. So, cold weather, harsh conditions. It's well known about the snowfall we get up here sometimes, but it's really a great place. It's a great place to live. Believe it or not, it's not wintertime for me anyway. That you really don't like, even though I'm joking about February. You just dress warm enough and whatever. It's the long, dreary springs when you're waiting for the weather to get nice and you're a kid and you've got your baseball mitt, you're ready to go, and it's 40 degrees and sideways rain, and that can be a little tough, on your psyche. But there's something about the climate, the bad sports teams, the great food. I don't know, but I was grateful to be sent back here to Western New York and to be with who I call my people. And yeah.
I like this idea that just being a Buffalonian is character building. Like, there are enough hardships, there are enough difficulties, that it just makes you a better person. I like that.
Well, there really is. And for a while there, all the late night comedians and everything, it was always jokes about Buffalo's weather. So the people around here adapt hey, it is what it is. Let's just do the next thing. And when you have a snowstorm and you've got 3 feet of snow, okay, we live in this culture now where we're all, we don't know our neighbors because we're talking to people across the country, through Facebook or something, as we're doing now. And it's not a bad thing, but how often do we neglect the people across the street, the people right next door, this, that, and the other thing? You get several feet of snow, and the nickname for the city of Buffalo is the city of good neighbors. That's when it comes out. People going across the street. I know there's an elderly lady who lives over there. I need to go over there and check on her, see how she's doing. And the young people grab the snow shovels and they start shoveling out, their neighbors, and it just really is a great thing.
That's beautiful. I love that. I also like the word Buffalonian, which sounds like Babylonian. Like it's an unusual word, but I like it. I'm for it. I wrote it down.
If you're a glutton for punishment, ask Father Andrew Damick about his Buffalo sentence, and then you can thank me or curse me later, as the case may be. So.
I love it. That's a good idea. I will ask him. But all right. So you're growing up in Buffalo, New York. I assume, were you guys going to a Baptist church, since your mom came from a line of Baptist preachers and was Baptist, and your dad was disconnected from Lutheranism after the family switched over to the Pentecostal church, and how did that work out?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my mom was the strongest Christian in the family, and so we, kind of followed her lead in where we went to church, and so we began attending the Southern Baptist Church in Orchard Park, First Baptist of Orchard Park. I went there for many years, and then when we got involved in a school, when my siblings and I were at school age, and my folks were dissatisfied with public schooling back in the 70s, we began to go to the church in West Seneca's Christian grade school, and they were more of an independent, Bible-believing, missionary-supporting, Baptist church, a little bit more on the fundamentalist side of things. And so my mom, looking for, in her journey towards Christ, and looking for some other way to, or better way to connect to Him. Eventually, a neighbor or a friend invited her to the big mega Assemblies of God church in town. So, we ended up becoming charismatic Christians. I was probably a teenager. I think maybe a junior in high school when we first started attending there. That's where I attended for about 10 years. Was active as a once I was into college and those kinds of things. I worked with the youth as a youth minister. And I play guitar a little bit and sing a little bit, and so I was, on the worship team and that kind of thing. So yeah, we journeyed around a little bit in my youth. So the whole idea that you don't necessarily have to be what you were brought up, kind of became a reality, and it's we often talk about religion as, the effect of consumerism on religion. And I think there's good and bad there. The good being, of course, in North America, United States and Canada, and most of the West, we have the freedom to like say, hey, I think something else may be better for me. It might be a truer expression of the Christian faith. It might be really the church that Christ intended and founded. It might be directly that church, and you can have the freedom to search that out and to go where you think that you're going to be able to connect with God. But the downside of that, of course, is that we become shoppers, and we're always looking for the better deal. And if this doesn't work, then I go to this restaurant. I don't like their chicken wings. We'll stay on that theme. And so I go to another restaurant, and I like that better. But then they're not cooking them as well. So we end up having this mentality where we're always shopping and never allowing ourselves to be planted and becoming faithful Christians. And while I believe in my own life, it's been a blessing. And, we're talking about my journey here, and to become Orthodox has been a huge blessing. Sometimes I worry about people that are always searching for something when really, even if it's less than perfect, sometimes the answer is to stay put, to put down roots, to love your neighbor where you're planted, and God will nourish you there. Unfortunately, some people don't like to hear that, but that's the reality. So, and not to downplay a spiritual journey. If God is leading you somewhere, then you need to follow him where he leads. And I did my best to follow God, and this landed me in the Orthodox Church. So.
Well, and how did that happen? So if you're a college student who's like doing youth ministry in the Pentecost, and I just want to say how interesting, like not only do you have all of these ancestors who have been ministers, but also your dad had the same experience, that he was raised in one place, and then as a teenager, his parents switch over to a charismatic church. And then for you, you're raised in the Baptist church, and then as a teenager, your parents become charismatic, except it stuck more with you, I would say, like, that you seemed to really get involved in the assemblies of God and really grow in it and like it. So how do you move from the assemblies of God then to Orthodoxy? How did that go for you?
For sure. And from the outset, I guess I have to really say how grateful I am for my Christian upbringing. I have to be grateful to my mother who, when I was a small child, sat me on her knee and told me how much Jesus loved me, and that the most important thing I could do in my life is commit myself to him, make him my Lord and Savior, and which I did. I believe I was 5 or 6 years old when I did it, and I think that really is important. And that was followed by believers' baptism in the Baptist church. And then as we grew as a family and went through different struggles and trials, and my mom being a spiritual seeker, and going to the charismatic church, which was a really big church. And I'm very grateful for what the charismatics taught me. I'm grateful for the Full Gospel Tabernacle in a number of ways. One of the primary ones being that is where I met the lovely Kuria Kelly Lynn. But also because Pastor Tommy Reed, our pastor there, taught me and taught all of us, for whoever's listening, to pursue God at all costs. Wherever that takes you, pursue God. And that was the spark in my heart, that when I began to have struggles with, what I experienced there at the tab, and wondering what Christ really intended, and where did the church go that he founded on the day of Pentecost, and those kinds of things, having that kind of teaching gave me the courage to say, okay, no matter what this costs, family members can agree or disagree, friends can agree or disagree, and that's unfortunate, and I got to do my best to love them and respect them for their own journeys, their own choices. But whether they respect me or not, I have to do what I have to do in following Christ. And so I am very grateful for my upbringing and what I've learned in those situations, and I'm very grateful for having the lovely Kuria Kelly Lynn. One of the things that was happening to me at the time was in my early 20s, when I was a good member at the Full Gospel Tabernacle, I ended up taking the civil service test and becoming a police officer for the city of Buffalo. And it came at a good time. My parents' marriage had broken up. My father had dealt with mental illness and all kinds of hurt and whatnot going on in my family. So my college career kind of got derailed. I wasn't the greatest student to begin with, but I could get by on and get B pluses without lifting a book when I was in high school. That didn't work that way in college, and all the things going on in my family life. I decided I needed to be home and be closer to my mom and my siblings, and nothing really working out on the college front. My mom called me one morning and said, "Do you ever consider being a cop?" And I said, "Not really." "Well, the Buffalo Police is having an exam, in a couple months. You should go down and sign up." And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe that's a good idea." So I placed well enough on an exam of 3,500 people to get hired. And so glory to God. What a blessing that was to my life. You can learn a lot in college. You can learn a heck of a lot of things about life, with a front row seat, which is what the police department gives you. So that was going on. And one of the things I was learning was that as I was getting older, I was not becoming a better person. I believed that even though when I was in college, I struggled. I tried to put on the atheist label for a little bit. It would be so convenient to be an atheist so you can do whatever you want to do. But I could never get over the person of Jesus Christ. I knew that Christ was a reality, in a way that I can't make an argument for, except that this is what I know I have to be accountable for and to follow him. So I knew Christ was real, what the church was, what it was all about. I just didn't know. I didn't understand, and I was pretty certain what I'd experienced to that part was not quite there. When I studied the history of Christianity, that going backwards in time for the Baptists, going backwards in time for the Pentecostals, going backwards in time for just about any other faith, I found dead ends. I thought perhaps I needed to become a Roman Catholic, and and so many of my city of Buffalo is a very Roman Catholic area with the Irish, Italians, Polish people that settled here. So many of my friends and coworkers were Catholics. And I always appreciated when I went to a wedding service, or somebody's had to bury their parent or a family member, and or baptizing a baby. I always appreciated their services. They ministered to me in a way that I never expected before. But every time I approached the Catholic Church, thought about calling a priest, thought about trying to enroll in one of these. I don't have the initials right, but education for adults, adult Christian education, something like that. There's an R in there,
like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like the catechumenate, but it's Roman Catholic
for sure, or at least an inquirer's type of thing. And
sure.
Every time I get to the threshold, I try to walk across, and I just couldn't do it. I had some major hangups about the papacy, and it seemed to me that the things that were attractive about Catholicism were being done away with. And of course, in my studies, I started to learn about Vatican II and this and that. So all that combined with my failing moral life, my interior life where I was feeling lost, worried about how do I stop this slide into sin, which I felt was not inevitable, but just so compelling that I didn't have good reasons to stand against sin. I was a Christian. I was saved. I had nothing to worry about. I'd be with the Lord one day. So I was really not given the tools, the motivation, or anything to really struggle with sin. So that's a big part of it. I sometimes tell my story and make it about the books I read and history and this and that. But in reflecting recently, I really do think it's about how, and this is the question too. I sometimes ask, well, why don't any other members of my family or my friends that have like the same outlook that I do, that, they complain about, some of the same things in the Protestant church as I did, or this, that, and the other thing. Why did I become Orthodox and other people just, no, I would never do something like that. And I've come to the conclusion it's because I need it more than they do. It's not because I'm better. And there may be times where I thought, oh, well, I'm smarter. I've read the right books, or I'm more spiritual, and I know you can connect to God better through this path or something like that. It's really because I am in need of God's grace and mercy in a way that perhaps others don't. And God and his mercy gave me the Orthodox Church. So yeah, that's where I was coming from when I encountered Orthodoxy.
And how did you encounter it? Like at what point, as you're, a Buffalo police officer, where do you run into Orthodoxy? Where do you encounter it?
Yeah. And there's not an Orthodox church on every corner. One of the
No.
attractions of Roman Catholicism is in Buffalo, there's a Catholic church in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I wasn't aware of any and I had no idea what Orthodoxy was. So one day, a friend of mine started a college career ministry at the Tabernacle in my former church. Now, I had not gone to church anywhere for a year because of this struggle, and it also helps when you're a night policeman, to not get up on Sunday morning and go to church. But I often would. But for a year there, I decided I wasn't going to. So I would go to bed when I'd come home from work, and I'd get up and I would try to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and try to remembering the Lord's Day as we've transferred that dignity there. And so I would get up and say my prayers, pray for everybody, read the scriptures, maybe something else. And in my prayers, one of my prayers was, Lord, please lead me to a faith that I can not only flourish in, but that I can feel like I can start a family and that I can establish a family and build a family upon. And so that was a huge concern for me. Now, granted, at the time, I wasn't dating anyone, no girlfriend or anything, but yet I knew that I wanted to be married. I knew that I wanted to have a family someday. And I knew that a very important part of that would be to be grounded in faith. And so that was my prayer. And so I didn't go anywhere for a year, but my buddy started this college career ministry on Friday nights. And because I played guitar and whatever, and I'm not doing anything else. And I love Mike, so I'm going to help him out with this deal. So if I'm going to work in this ministry, then I do need to go to church on Sunday. So I started going back, I wouldn't say every Sunday, but at least a couple Sundays a month to the Tab. So one Friday night at this college, all of a sudden a couple friends or a couple faces are there that were familiar. And sure enough, there were two guys, one of them who had been kind of a mentor to me, but in my dalliances with Calvinism. He was really involved with the theology of R.J. Rushdoony, I think they're called the Reconstructionists, Gary North, Gary DeMar, Cornelius Van Til, a bunch of other Calvinist Reformed thinkers in the last 50 years. And so I had been doing a lot of reading with him, and he used to hold a study group in his home. And Steve was also a very talented musician, and I'm attracted to musicians and to music in general and that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that. But then they, kind of lost touch with them or whatever. Here they showed up, and Christopher was one of the young men in that group, one of these other disciples of Stephen Petrazik. So there's, they say, so what are you up to these days? And I say, well, I'm here helping Mike with this ministry, but I really do have to find something liturgical, sacramental, and I'm not really sure what I'm looking for or what that is, but, I'm just here temporarily with him. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. We're going to be chrismated into the Orthodox Church next week. And I was like, what are you talking about? So they invited me to their chrismation. I couldn't make it. I was probably working or something, but that, the conversation intrigued me to read more. And it dawned on me, I don't remember exactly when, but I remember reading in a newspaper article in the Buffalo News. They had a really good religious section at that time. And I read a story about a group of evangelicals that had converted to Orthodoxy. I something registered there, but I didn't even remember the word Orthodoxy or anything about that. Now, much later, I realized you might guess it was, Father Peter Gilchrist and
right.
The Evangelical Orthodox Church folk.
Yeah.
So that was in my head somewhere, something that I'd read but didn't pay too much attention to. And then I went to the local library, because this was pre-internet. You couldn't get on Orthodox Wiki or, Ancient Faith Radio and get any information. And they had nothing except one book, The Orthodox Church by Timothy Ware. So I checked that out, took that home. I think I read that maybe in like 2 days, devoured that thing. And it was like, I think this is what I'm looking for. I'm not sure. I called the library and asked for more books on Orthodoxy, and told me to go to this library across town or this. And so I got some more information. Then I found out that Frankie Schaeffer had converted to Orthodoxy. Frankie's dad, Francis Schaeffer, who was a well-known evangelical philosopher, was kind of influential in my spiritual journey. I loved his writings, The God Who Was There, and then I had read some of Frankie's stuff, criticizing, where we came from, sham pearls for real swine, and other very mean-spirited books, I would say Frank wrote, but stuff that resonated with me. So I heard he had become Orthodox, and so finally I am able to visit St. George, where my two friends were going, which is the St. George that I now pastor. I walked in the door, and it was December 17th, 1993. And I now know this because I'm the pastor now, and I found the guest registry that used to be in the narthex there. And sure enough, Kevin Barberg in my bad chicken scrawl and the date there. I am not a very mystical person. My wife is the sensitive one and knows things that, that God reveals to her. I'm very, what I see and what I feel and smell, and so I'm not a mystical person. But when I walked in that door, I had an experience. I knew I was going to be Orthodox, and I also knew I was going to serve that altar up there. Now I thought that second part was fulfilled. I ended up being the parish deacon for 8 years. It never occurred to me that I would come back and be the priest. But that was how I encountered Orthodoxy. A lot of people's journeys are very different. My wife's journey is different. There are people that come and dabble, they read and whatever, and some point they say, yeah, I have no other choice but to be Orthodox, and they commit themselves to being an Orthodox Christian, and the Lord blesses them, and they would never change years later. My story, again, I don't know why me, but that's what I experienced. At one point, many years later, I read the story of Prince Vladimir's emissaries walking into Constantinople, and writing back to him, as he was looking for a faith for his people. We didn't know whether we were in heaven on earth. We just know God dwells there among men, and that was my experience. Just like Prince Vladimir had found a faith for his people. I didn't have any people yet, but I knew I'd found my faith for them. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's amazing that you had both the call to the priesthood, which maybe seemed like just a clergy-ishness, but that you had that call at the same time. That's very beautiful. That's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Father. And we are going to go to a very short break. We're going to come back, and I want to hear all about your experiences once you became Orthodox. So we will return in just a moment with Father Raphael Barberg. And keep in mind the number is 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346. We'll see you in a minute.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
Hello, this is L. Joseph Latender. I'm happy to announce the release of my new book, When You Give, Ancient Answers and Contemporary Questions. In this companion volume to When You Pray and When You Fast, I juxtapose scriptural and patristic admonitions about almsgiving with a look at contemporary issues that make it sometimes difficult to see our way forward in this regard. Along with the rationale for almsgiving, I offer practical suggestions for how almsgiving can work in our lives as modern Christians. When You Give is now available at store.ancientfaith.com. That's store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
And we are back with Father Raphael Barberg. And Father, I'm curious, so you come into the church and you can feel that you're called to Orthodoxy. But of course, there's always that complication of a spouse who also has to then come to that conclusion on their own and through their own path. How long was it before you were chrismated? And then after that, how long before you became clergy? Before you were a deacon? Oh, Father, you know what? We can't hear you, Father. I think you may have. Ah, there you are. You just came back.
I think I have a bad cord.
Ah, you're good, though. You're back. You know what? It's not your cord. It was Matushka Trudy's fault.
Okay.
I heard that somewhere.
No mistakes are allowed. You hang out with me.
So, Father, tell me how long was this process for you?
Well, just riffing on your first statement there, my heart just goes out towards young people, not so young people that are lonely, single people that would love to have somebody to care for and to live life with and all this stuff. And they're people I pray for. And so that was me. I lived through my 20s as a young, as a single guy who, would have loved to have somebody to love and to build a life with and whatnot. And nothing ever really is working out for many reasons. And so, I have this experience this is December of 93. And then in the spring, spring of 94. So sometime in that winter, I remember wrestling with God saying, Lord, you know the desire of my heart, but I also know you know better for me than I know for myself. If your desire for me to be a single person, then you have to help me. You have to give me the strength, the vision, and whatever, because I'm failing at it right now. And so I had this, wrestling with God moment, and I felt this peace. I felt, okay, he heard me, and he didn't strike me with lightning because I was, having a hard time with what I thought maybe his will would be for me, but rather his mercy, his love, his peace is the thing that becomes present. It's interesting that it was only shortly after that wrestling that I needed a date for an award ceremony in the police department. I won't get into those details, but maybe I could have gone solo, and people do, and God bless you if you do. But I need someone to go with me, so I don't feel like a total loser or whatever. So a friend of mine happens to mention to me he goes, hey, I just saw Kelly Rainville out the other night, and man, she's looking good, and she's recently single. And I said, Kelly, huh? I said, she would go with me because she was my little sister's friend, and she was in the youth group, and I was working as a youth minister and all this stuff. So I always liked Kelly, but I'd never seen her in a romantic way because it just was inappropriate. She was younger than me, and this kind of thing. And I'm not sure that, anything really changed at that moment, with the exception of that, oh, I love Kelly. She would go with me. So I give her a call. And we had this great of course I'll go with you. That'd be fun. I look forward to that. And I said, well, we haven't seen each other in a while. Why don't we go out first and get reacquainted? And she's like, yeah, that'd be great. So we made plans, and I go to pick her up on our first date. And when she opened the door, okay, mystical experience number 2. And again, I'm not a guy who has mystical experience. And maybe I might have had some that I thought, in premonitions of things, and they never turned out. But in these 2 instances, they did. So when she opened the door, I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to marry that woman. And so we started dating. And again, since we knew each other pretty well, there was none of this getting to know you we really did know each other. We were friends for a while. So within only a few months, when exactly we got engaged, that's a topic for discussion, and we can save that for another show. So you can ask her that when you have her on there. So our memories are a little different, but we ended up getting engaged. And so one of our first conversations, probably before the seriousness of committing ourselves to each other, I told her, I'm on a path. I know we met each other through the tabernacle and whatever, but I'm on a path to become Orthodox. I don't know what that path looks like or how long that will take or whatever, but you have to know that. And I guess the only thing I could ask of you is to, at least explore it, to study it, learn about it, and then we can, as we go through life here, we can figure the rest of that out. And she says, okay, I will do that. But I said, I have to talk to Father George because I'm supposed to be chrismated next month. So I made an appointment to go see Father George, and she, of course, can tell her story again. But I remember her being like, "Oh my gosh, what is he going to tell him?" We were raised with, the teaching about don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers and that kind of thing. And Father George, of course, told me, "Okay, stop the presses. Okay, the Orthodox Church isn't going anywhere. We look forward to making you a member of our parish and making you an Orthodox Christian, but we need to slow this down, and you guys need to talk about these things as a couple, and maybe you have to find a happy medium." And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know what that is. Or maybe you do become one of these couples that, on Sunday you go church here and she goes to church here, and we have some of those couples in our family that it works out and they love each other and they respect each other. But you guys need to figure that out, and you have to. So I was disappointed that I had to wait to become Orthodox. But I went back and told her that, and she's like, "He told you what?" She's thinking, "Oh, if we could get my claws in a convert, then the heck with this young woman or anyone else." And that was not what happened at all. So that kind of like opened her heart to seeing, okay, well, then maybe I need to check what this all out. So with Father George's advice, we were going to St. George twice a month, and then to the tabernacle twice a month, and then pretty soon it was three Sundays a month at St. George, and then pretty soon we were just going to St. George. And by God's grace, by His mercy and love, we were brought into. Well, we had our Protestant. We got married in the Protestant church in our home church of Full Gospel Tabernacle, and Pastor Reed allowed us to bring in some of the Orthodox prayers. And after the service, he said, "I have never read such long prayers in my life." So that's what happened. And we had so many people saying those prayers were beautiful. And we had made some Orthodox friends at that point. Said, that sounds like a lot like what's in our church. Yeah, I don't know whether I was supposed to do that or not, but that's what we did. And so by God's grace, we were married. And then the next year on St. Mary of Egypt Sunday, which would have been 96, married 95, St. Mary of Egypt 96, we came into Orthodoxy together. And then in that fall, in October, I think it was October 15th, Father George gave us with the direction of his bishop at the time. And these things are confusing. It happens differently in different ways. And but he was instructed to give us a Orthodox wedding. So we had our Orthodox, very small, with some sponsors, and then 9 months later, we gave birth to a little boy, Colin Isaac Barberg. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So my tribe, my people began.
Oh, that's just wonderful, Father. I love that. I love that story, and it is. I can see where it would be. You'd feel like, oh, this has already been a long struggle, and now I got to wait to be chrismated. But that's very beautiful. And I think the whole thing of having your wedding blessed. I know that there are some cases where, there are some bishops who will say it has to be blessed, and some bishops who say it doesn't have to be blessed. But it's, for a lot of people, I think it's kind of a choice whether or not to have it. Like if you request it, it can be done. And I don't know, in my own life, I've done that, and I thought it was very beautiful. It's just such a beautiful wedding service that it's really wonderful to have the opportunity to participate in it.
For sure. And, the big thing is for us who are coming into the church, or those of us who've been married, outside of the church, even if because it happens. We have Orthodox young people that, maybe fall away from the church and they get married outside of the church. and maybe years later they come back and renew their faith. The important thing is following the advice of our priest and his bishop, and God's blessings come through that relationship. Yeah. So yeah, if you're given a choice, then I would recommend it. But I also think it's just really important to not, right now there's all kinds of discussions. The internet's always ablaze with, yes, should I be baptized? Should I be chrismated? And I should not be making that decision when I come into the church. I should be being obedient to what my priest has me do. Right. And that's where the blessing is, right? Yeah. So with all these sacraments, that's the approach that we all need to take.
Well, and I think that's just always the case with Orthodoxy, right? The more humble your approach is, the more humility you're showing, the more the blessings are just going to pour down on you. And so, that's the hard thing for Americans coming in is we're very accustomed to being the ones who make the choices. And like you said, we're shoppers, we're consumers, right? We're picking it out. And so when we can set that aside and learn how to obey and to do whatever the person who's our spiritual guide at that time is telling us to do, it's a blessing. It's a good thing. But, we actually have a call, Father. We have Susan has called in. Susan would like to comment on something that you said about becoming Orthodox. So, Susan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome to the program, Susan. Where are you?
I'm in Lexington, Tennessee.
Oh, beautiful. That's wonderful. Well, great. Well, thank you for calling in. What did you want to say to Father Raphael?
I just wanted to say that when you were talking about your first time in an Orthodox church, how you knew you were that was the faith you needed to follow, it resonated with me because that's how I felt the first time I was in the Orthodox church. My husband brought me into Orthodoxy, and I feel so blessed since I came into the church, and I just wanted to say thank you for telling your story tonight. And
you're welcome.
Keep us in your prayers as we are right now. We're not in the health to be able to be in church like we want to be. And with that, I will let you all go.
For sure, Susan. What's your husband's name?
James.
Prayers for you, James and Susan.
Thank you.
I just put you on my prayer list too, Susan. Thank you so much
for
calling. That's lovely. It's true. I think a lot of people, Father, I'm sure that resonates with them. I was not one of those people. I walked into the Orthodox Church and was like, well, this is weird. I always wish I'd had that moment, but I think that's so beautiful. And I love that Susan had that as well. But Father, as I look at your biography, I see that you became a deacon on September 3rd, 2001, which is a really interesting date because right after that, of course, we experienced 9/11, and you were a police officer and an Orthodox deacon. Tell me a little bit about what you were doing around that time, of course, already being in New York yourself as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. So as you said, I was ordained a deacon. It was the Feast of St. Mamas, if I remember correctly. And within, that week, the 10 days, we experienced this tragedy that, we just commemorated last month of, 9/11, 2001. So at the time, I was a police lieutenant, and I had a cushy desk job, which was the requirement for me to become a deacon. There's canonical issues about, carrying a gun and these kinds of things that each bishop and would-be clergyman who might be a cop or something like that has to work through and figure it out. But I was the court liaison officer for the city, so I had a desk job, and so the events of that day, revealed themselves, and I think it was the next day I'm in work. it's hard to remember because city court where I worked was getting constantly bomb threated. So we're in and we're out, and we're in and we're out. But at some point, I'm reading, IOCC is, there was an email. This is the earlier days of the internet, and most of us had email at that point. And an email around the IOCC is raising monies for a relief effort in New York City. And it was mainly about that, raising funds for this relief effort. So I replied to the email and I said, I'm a Buffalo, New York police lieutenant and also newly ordained deacon. Is there any way I can be helpful? And I hit send, and I think my phone rang immediately. When can you be in New York? And I was like, oh, okay. I'll figure that out. So I talked to my wife, and of course the planes are grounded. But I could catch the Amtrak from Buffalo across the upstate New York and then down the Hudson. And so I made plans to go down there. And so early initiation in service as a deacon was ground zero, the family center at the Chelsea Piers. First, the family center was in the one of the big armory in Manhattan, Chelsea Piers, and of course, right down at ground zero. Fairly well known in Orthodox quarters that there was an Orthodox church buried under the rubble, St. Nicholas, which they just reopened down there. Glory to God. But there was an Orthodox church just outside the closed zone. St. Barbara's Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox Church down there. And so the IOCC sent me a man named, can't remember his name. It was right there, but it was so long ago, Dirk Van Gorp, who wasn't an Orthodox Christian, but had done lots of work with the IOCC. And so we were down there, and then a few volunteers from the New York area. And we set up a relief center there, and got to spend lots of time going down to ground zero. And for me, of course, my heart in civil service was the firemen and policemen down there. Spent lots of time talking to them, praying with them. I was there when some firemen were able to recover an icon, some marble, and some beeswax candles, which of course were all distorted from the heat from St. Nicholas Church, of which one of the Greek priests there said, Father, or deacon, you need to take these and take them back to your people so you can pray for us down here. So I have a piece of marble and a beeswax candle that in our church from that scene. So it was, talking to all kinds of people, Orthodox Christians that had lost their loved ones. That was the beginning of working with the IOCC. Since then, probably the one most immediately after that, there was that tragic, senseless shooting at Virginia Tech, where we had a very active OCF group there. And so Father Kevin Shearer, who was the head of the OCF at that time, Father, having a hard time, Father Peter Preble, Father Angelo Pappas, the four of us went down there and was able to meet with the OCF kids and did some PTSD debriefings with them, supported the priests there from the nearby Greek parish that was ministering to them, and then lots of ministry to folks, students that would just approach us, saw us dressed in collars and other identifiable ways that they came to us, wanted us to pray with them, attended some, gatherings and other things like that. After that, was able to go to a shooting at Northern Illinois University, NIU, Valentine's Day shooting there. And they did hurricane relief from, probably the biggest thing is Hurricane Harvey in Houston. I was there for 2 weeks. People at St. Elijah in Oklahoma City were very gracious in wanting me to go there and represent them, as well as the IOCC as the assistant priest. It was, a little bit easier for me to be able to do something like that. and led some teams down there, and then Hurricane Florence in North Carolina. So yeah, and as I said on the beginning of the show, or I think it was off air, so I want to make sure I say that. You folks, when you give to the IOCC, I want you to know how good that money is spent, how well that money is spent. Their overhead is very low. The watchdog groups give them A+ ratings all the time, and I've seen firsthand, what we've done. We were able to buy generators for people. Superstorm Sandy, I forgot there. That happened in November, and it was freezing, and people's houses were flooded out, and they needed to get in there and rip out, their carpeting and the drywall and all this stuff. And so we were able to purchase propane heaters and generators, and these were going into neighborhoods where they would share them and be able to use them. We were able to buy tons of underwear, which is one of my more interesting things, going into Walmart, me and another priest, and buying cartloads of women's underwear. In retrospect, I would have taken the collar off before I did that. Right. But so all kinds of interesting things happen, but all kinds of good work is done. It's just it's a blessing. So please, when there's a disaster, you see IOCC is giving a response, do it. Give them the money. Have the fundraiser at the church. Get the muck buckets and have the kids start putting them together in the hygiene kits. They do good work there. So sorry about the plug, but
no, it's a good thing to plug,
I had to do it.
Right? IOCC is International Orthodox Christian Charities, IOCC.org. It is, I think, our biggest Orthodox charitable organization. And they go everywhere. And I think people assume that the IOCC just goes in and helps Orthodox people. So like if there's a problem in Greece, floods in Greece or fires, they'll go in, and that's true. But they also go places where there aren't any Orthodox people. And they're not there just to serve the Orthodox. They're really just there to serve those in need in disaster relief. And it's just right. Beautiful. Yeah, and I love that they send priests and they send, mental health care professionals to go and just counsel people and just sit with them, to just be with them.
For sure. Emotional spiritual care is a big part of that response. And they've spent lots of money and time training clergy and mental health professionals to do that. When I was in Houston, the bulk of my 2 weeks there was at the big convention center down there, which was a relief center, working under the auspices of the Red Cross, giving emotional spiritual care to anybody and everybody who came our way. But we don't just need that, So besides your money, if you're a mental health professional, okay, we can hook you up. If you're a clergyman who's got some special experiences, like you're a cop or you're recently out of the armed forces or something like that, ambulance people, doctors, whoever, but we also need guys that are good with a hammer and women who are good with serving soup and good with a hammer too, or whatever our skill sets are, our willingness. What we need is healthy, active people. And a lot of like young adults, unfortunately, young adults are beginning their careers and they don't have vacation time or this and that. But if you are able to work something out with your employer to take some time off, if you can afford to maybe go without pay for a week, so that or whatever, if you can go. They also do house builds, 6 months, year after the tragedy. They'll send teams down to with what's the ministry that builds houses? Habitat for Humanity. So the field is white unto harvest, brothers and sisters. We just need willing people, and whatever you're able to give, whether it's money or your time and energies, it can be used for your neighbor. And IOCC is a good conduit. Okay, there's other ways to give and serve too. Your local parish, your priest can tell you if you want to serve how to do that. So I don't want to detract from what the local parish is doing, but just to vouch for something that's really good. We can lament our disunity as the Orthodox Church here in North America. We've got lots of issues that have to be resolved. It's a pain. Here locally, we have 7 great Orthodox churches. It's so hard for us to work together. Decisions that are made in chanceries, in New York and wherever, not only there, overseas affect what we do here, our witness, our unity. But here's something that we've been doing together since the 80s, and it works, and it's good. So I think this is a really good thing for all of us. If you're ROCOR, you're Antiochian, you're Greek, who cares? And if you're not Orthodox and you want to help us out, we want you to. So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank God. And so, Father, thank you for your service with the IOCC, and also, of course, for serving His Holy Church. And just thank you for joining us tonight. It's really been delightful to get a chance to talk to you again, Father.
Glory to God. It's been fun, for sure.
Thank you. I told you an hour goes fast. It goes really
sure
fast.
Does.
And thank you to our audience. Thanks for joining us again. We'll be back next week. I would say with another Everyday Orthodox Christian. Next week, it's me. So if you have any questions for me, write them down and be sure to call in. We'll see you next week. Good night.